My name is Barry Searle. I've lived on the Kaipara here all my life, and I'm fourth generation. The family came here in the 1850s and we haven't gone away. And now we're into our seventh generation. As a 9-year-old, I seen this fella scratching in the hills, and I went down and asked him what he was doing after 2 or 3 days of watching him. And he told me he was looking for Toheroa, and he was looking up in the dunes itself. And I said to him, "None here, they'd out on the beach." He says, "You come here," and he had a microscope and looked through the microscope and seen the eggs hatching. And that set me on a trail which I've carried on all my life. Toheroa was part of our staple diet, and we'd have it as chowder, soup or fritters, and we also, if we went fishing, we'd use it for bait. And the snapper just loved it when you're just using the ordinary handline with a weight on, fishing in the surf. I think that the Toheroa make the best soup, and the Tuatua make the best fritters.
Well, I'm Ron Halliday, and I'm a committee member of the Dargaville Museum. In the 1950s, everybody lived on Toheroa, and when we pulled them out of the sand, of course, their long tongues hung out, and we used to bite the tongues off, and which we shouldn't have done, and put them in our kit and take home. But they're lovely, sweet food, and gives you a lot of energy eating raw Toheroas, but you can only handle about 6 or 7 because they're just too filling, you know.
I'm Marie Saunders, I'm the director of the Dargaville Museum. I particularly like the fritter, I must say. For me, they're a little bit rich, straight from the shell or as a whole, so I prefer a mussel. But when you put them in a fritter, they're beautiful.
And also Toheroa soup, put it into your thermos. You could work all day on Toheroa soup for lunch or any time during the day. That's good food for a working man. What we used to do is take a bucket of salt water with us from the beach and put the Toheroa in the salt water and leave them sitting in there for a few hours, and they spat out all the sand that was in their system, same as we do at Tuatuas, which are just as sweet and just as nice to eat. And you put them through the mincer, and you can mix all sorts of onions and bread and egg. You can mix a whole lot of stuff to make beautiful Toheroa fritters. And if we have a big function here or a funeral or something, and we can get a permit to make Toheroa fritters.
My name's Rio Curtis, and I'm born and bred on the Kaipara. And this is where we get our food from.
Yeah, I've got childhood memories of going out on our uncle's big launch out at Tinapai, the harbour at Tinapai, catching all our fish and seafood and mussels and getting all those things together. Then going back to our auntie's father's house and deep frying all the fish and batter and cooking our own chips, having a really big family get together and eating all our food we've caught for the day.
I'm Roy Andrews, born and bred Whangarei. I've lived here in Whangarei for 77, nearly coming 78 years. We used to go down the harbour when we had yachts, and in those days there was no quota on scallops. And we filled a 7-foot dinghy, chock a block, took it up Toheroa, hopped in board and it sunk, lost a lot. Earlier days there was no limit. You could go and dig a sack of Toheroas. And then they sort of put this kibosh on them, and they closed the season for years. Then they reopened it for about a fortnight or something. Yeah, well, I've had Toheroa soup, but I mean, you put that many Toheroas in it, you can stand a spoon up in it.
It's Kerry Wilson. I was born in Whangaroa and lived in a little village called Kaio. My father ran the general store in Kaio. We had a batch at Whangaroa, and as a kid I used to go down onto the wharf and throw a line off and catch snapper, as many as you wanted.
I'm Lynn Wilson. I don't like a lot of seafood, but I cook a lot of seafood. All our family catch We've dived, we've netted, we've fished. So I've had to learn to do a lot of the things I do with seafood by smell. Taste too, I suppose, if I do a sauce first and then add it to it. But I've got a good sense of smell. I can usually tell what goes well with things. Snapper, just dusted in flour, then in egg, and then in breadcrumbs and fried with a knob of butter and a small amount of oil till it's crispy. And I like it personally with just either naked or with lemon or with horseradish cream. I quite like a little bit of heat with it. Sometimes I put tarragon in the breadcrumbs, sometimes I put spices and herbs closer to the fish before I actually flour it. Especially if it's in something like kawai, which can be quite a strong taste. I then will sprinkle the herbs directly on the flesh. I try to do different things because you get bored with the same things. I try to think of flavours that will go together, and if you're cooking something like pipi fritters or mussel fritters, the star of the show has to be the mussel or the pipi. So keep everything else around it complementary and milder, and try and think of things that emphasise flavours and bring out flavours. I've also done things over the years like I make my fish pie isn't necessarily only with smoked fish, but they might have a piece of fish left and a couple of prawns and a couple of scallops, and all left over at the end of a weekend's fishing adventure. They in a nice white sauce with a bit of cream and a bit of white wine, some parsley, topped off with mashed softened kumara, things like that make a delicious fish pie.
My name's Mike Pellegrom. I was brought to New Zealand when I was 5 years old, born in 1951, living in beautiful Northland, on the water. It was 1 year ago today that we pulled a marlin into my boat, brought it home, and I have a smoker at the bottom of my garden. I contacted my brother-in-law, who was a fish smoker for the Bay of Islands Swordfish Club for maybe 15 years. Asked him what the recipe was for smoking, because he was very successful, and he said, cut it up, Mike, just like we used to, because I used to help him. He said, just before you're going to do anything, put a little bit of salt on it. Salt's only on it for about a minute, then just dunk it in a bit of fresh water and put it on the tray and let it form a skin. Put it in the smoker. And it was very, very successful.
The last cannery I was involved in was the Toheroa cannery. That's where the actual canning factory's burnt down now. But I actually worked the beach with the scientist and a driver and sort of worked out where the boys were to dig each day. The cannery, most of the cannery was used in New Zealand, but the biggest majority of it was exported to places like France. And the first 2 boxes of canned tour each year went to Buckingham Palace, because to be the king, he was only the prince when he came here, he asked for a second helping, and from then on it escalated. And nowadays, the main soup made in our area is the kumara soup, and that makes since I've got into the Beauregard kumara, it makes absolutely wonderful soup. So instead of us giving our visitors dara or tutu soup, now we give them kumara soup.
Mum and us, we'd go down and she'd have the spade and an old pram without the hood, and we'd get that and take them home, and Mum would always have bacon and fried Toheroa, and that was lovely. And she would split the gut part of the Toheroa and open it out like a butterfly, and salt and pepper and flour and the bacon, and then it's cooked in fat, of course, not in the oil, and she'd cook the Toheroa in the bacon, and it was yummy.
The tara soup that was actually made in the cannery was used from fish stock, and then had the tara added to it, minced and added to it. With our own recipe is pretty simple. You chop up an onion, put the tutu tara in with it, minced, and bring it to the boil, add a bit of curry, and then add a tin of coconut cream, and then just finish off with a little bit of milk. And it's as simple as that. Some people put a bit of butter on it, but that's optional. That's for the soup, and that makes a lovely soup. Fritter is once again pretty simple. You mince an onion or put it in the whiz an onion, then whiz the shellfish in with the onion, add a bit of curry at that stage and an egg, and then put it out into a bowl, mix it all, make sure it's well mixed together, and add self-raising flour to it to just make it thick enough, and then fry it in vegetable oil. It's as simple as that. See, we were brought up where, with not much in the way of food, but the beach fed us with both fish, and I'd often even come home from school and Mum would say, nothing for tea, you'll have to go and get something from the beach. And so if you couldn't catch a fish, you took some toheroa home, and that was our staple food. That's always taught me to respect the beach and sort of try and with the research and the work that I've done on the beach, I've tried to do it for the next generation, so there's something for them, and that's lead the way through. Now we've been lucky, we've got the Toheroa in good supply at the beach, and the kumara, and the kumara soup is absolutely an exceptional soup.
I was going through old cookbooks with family recently, and granddaughter said, "But Nana, how do you know what to do? There's no method in this recipe." And I said to her, the old days they didn't, because you cooked alongside your mum and your grandmother, and possibly even two grandmothers from both sides, and you had just your ingredients, and they taught you how it should look and smell and feel, and what you needed to do to make a cake rise or a scone soft and tender. Being in the kitchen has always been the hub of family life, and to prepare food for those you love is a real honour and a privilege, and it brings family together.